and we're going to be focusing on some local issues today. We're going to be focusing on gaps in what's being offered locally, as well as barriers locally that are making it hard to provide affordable housing. And then we're going to end with a couple of success stories of things that are going well in our community. Before we do that, I want to just, the video, by the way, is available. If you didn't get it, it's available on the Together Colorado website. It's available on the Echo Colorado website. So you can see the first session if you missed it. And then I want to have the organizations that are sponsoring this very quickly tell you a little bit about themselves. And I'm going to start with me. I am the director of the East County Housing Opportunity Coalition. And that is an organization devoted to education and advocacy in the communities that are east of Boulder in Boulder County. And Megan?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Carrier, and I am the Deputy Director of Together Colorado. We are a statewide grassroots organization that does grassroots organizing throughout the state. We're multi-faith, multiracial, from Pueblo to Fort Collins, all the way out to the Western Slope. We work on several issues in our grassroots format, from immigration, healthcare, housing, criminal justice, environment, and economic justice. And so very excited to be with you all tonight. We do quite a bit of grassroots organizing right here in Boulder County around housing, both mobile homes, affordable housing, and that way. So looking forward to learning with you all tonight.
Thank you, Emmy. I'm Annette James. I am the president of the Boulder County branch of the NAACP. And our mission, of course, is the elimination of race-based discrimination in all facets of society. Thank you.
And our other partner, I do not see him represented in the list. Do we have any labor folks here who would like to speak for the Boulder Area Labor Council? Because I don't see Jeff, our labor partner, on the list. If you want to raise your hand if you're from labor. Yay. Well, I heard somebody yelling yay, but I can't tell who you are. I just want to say that the labor has long been involved in housing as an issue in Boulder County, because Boulder County, you may know, started off as a mining community, and housing for miners was a really important part of their original history. So they have a long-standing commitment, as well as they've created some funding mechanisms throughout the country to help people afford housing. And we are looking at how we might take advantage of the financing they've made available here in Boulder County. So I'll stop there and we'll move on to the next.
Oh, Anne Marie, somehow you got put on mute again. Not sure how it happened.
If you recall, at the last meeting, we asked you to do some breakout work, and we sent that out in summary form in a spreadsheet that everyone who participated at the last meeting got. But it was a lot of information. It was pretty dense. And so we have asked our friend and colleague, Dave Dvorak, who is with the Immaculate Conception Social Justice Ministries and Together Colorado, to summarize that for us and to tell us a little bit about the themes that were present, the overall themes, the things that kept coming up in the breakout groups over and over again. And so Dave, would you take it from there and tell us about what you discovered? And at the end of the training, at the end of the 4 weeks, we'll put information on all the breakouts in a written document. We have that spreadsheet if you want it, but we'll make it a more usable format in the future towards the end of the training. Dave?
Thank you, Anne Marie. There were 16 breakout sessions, and a lot of the comments were similar but worded in with different words and phrases. So I've identified 8 what I call 8 common threads that seem to reoccur. One is considering density options. 2 is the need to think outside the box, like housing on parking lots, rezoning, ADUs, tiny homes, and so forth. 3 is we should place work and affordable housing options close to each other. 4, people and housing options in our neighborhoods and communities should reflect racial, ethnic, economic, and intergenerational diversity. That was a mouthful. 5, we should have balance in valuing people and the environment. 6, use education to address racism in our housing directions and throughout the community. 7, elected and appointed city and county officials should seek input from all strata of residents for a racial equity plan. And 8, quite a bit was talked about with NIMBYism.
All right, we are going to hold on to any questions about that for the future, and we are going to introduce our first speakers. The first one is going to be Ryan Hibber Jones, who has been in the affordable housing industry since 2004. Started out as a project manager and then as a senior underwriter for 2 national low-income housing tax credit syndication firms. He is an MBA from the University of Colorado and has been focusing on real estate finance and development since 2008, and he specializes in financial and project management consulting services. So Ryan, are you there?
Yes, hello everyone.
Hi. Feel free to get started, Ryan.
Well, I think we'll introduce Ian as well. Ian and I are going to present. I don't know if you want to do that.
I've got a little bio for Ian too. Ian is with Boulder Housing Partners, and he has been working to develop affordable housing since 2013. He's worked as a development project manager, and he manages new construction for Boulder Housing Partners. So the 2 of you take it over.
Awesome. Can I just share my screen here, Anne Marie? Is that
If Megan needs to make you a co-host, so hold on so you can share your screen.
Nope, he is. All our speakers are co-hosts currently. So you should be set to go.
Let me see. All right, we're good. You guys see that? Great. Well, yeah, thanks for having us on. Again, I'm Ian Swallow. I work for Boulder Housing Partners. Nice to see a lot of familiar faces in all the pages of faces on Zoom here. So Ryan and I just put together this presentation. I think the question we were asked was a pretty broad one, just in terms of what drives some of the high cost of housing in Boulder County, and I think specifically what we're going to be talking about is really the development of new housing. I think that's where we have, kind of the expertise. So with that, we will jump on in. So this first slide, I think, is just helpful to orient folks to the general kind of development process we go through. I think this is not unique to affordable housing. This is certainly something all developers go through, but affordable housing definitely has some unique challenges in all of these steps. So I'll just quickly run through all of these. So, we start out looking just for general available land. I think you'll hear that as a theme throughout of that can be difficult to come by in Boulder County, really anywhere along the Front Range. Certainly land availability is always tricky. We then go through, assemble our team of, architects, contractors, Ryan to run the financial analysis, From there, we typically go through the entitlement process. That's another area I think you'll hear about that certainly plays a role in housing affordability, is getting, approval from the, all the various local governments in Boulder County. And then finally we go, or it's not finally, but we go through our, financial closing, putting together all the funding sources, making sure budgets match, making sure we have the right mix of who we're trying to serve in a particular development. And then construction, which is, typically one of the most public facing parts of the process, but is really the tail end of the development process before we get to project completion at the end. And I think, this next slide here is a helpful way to see it, that, these things they don't come together in a vacuum. So it's, 5 years feels like a good time period to give folks a sense of how long, affordable housing can take to come together. And all of these things are kind of happening simultaneously. So you can see, over time, we're doing any number of the, tasks identified in the previous slide to bring kind of new affordable housing to fruition. And then Ryan, you want to jump in at all on just acquisition land costs? A lot of projects.
Sure. Thanks, Ian. As you mentioned, obviously in Boulder County, as everyone knows, land costs are pretty high relative to some other areas in the state. And that's obviously because it's a very desirable place to live. And I think one of the things that Ian and I like to discuss, especially in a conversation like this, is that while there are some aspects of living in Boulder County that make housing less affordable than perhaps some other locations, it's not to say that that's bad. Obviously, the County of Boulder and Boulder proper has a lot of, the green belt is very valuable. The water that we have is very valuable. It's a very desirable place to live. But as a result, it does make affordable housing development and the financing of that a little more difficult than some other areas. And this is the case in several other locations throughout the state as well. A big one of that is of water tap fees. In Boulder City, we call them PIF fees, planned investment fees, and other impact fees. And that's the, I guess, loosely based around the slogan, development pays its own way, which is definitely fair enough, but it's something that we have to contend with when we're trying to build affordable housing. And Ian and I, just to be clear, work mostly in providing market rate housing, multifamily housing instead of single family housing. Affordable single family housing has its own challenges as well. But there are certain tools that we use to get around them. For example, in the city of Boulder, there's a lot of what we call soft financing or gap financing for these projects. And that certainly helps. And the other tools that we have at our disposal would be what we call public-private partnerships. So we partner with local cities, the county, and sometimes they bring land to the deal, which certainly helps. And sometimes that land is donated or at least at a below market value. So that's one way we can help address this problem. But as Ian mentioned, the development process has a long gestation period. And so along that time, time is money. Markets change and prices inevitably increase on all aspects. Hopefully the financing terms don't get a little as challenging as those cost increases, but it definitely is a long timeline, and there's a lot of opportunity during that timeline for things to go wrong. Sometimes a lot of people say, especially in affordable housing, a project dies a couple times before it becomes reality. And so that Boulder Housing Partners, and that's who Ian works with. I actually used to work with them a while ago, but as the housing authority for the city of Boulder, has access to some other tools that you can use on the financing side, but of course they're here indefinitely. And so that gives cities a fair amount of comfort going forward, along with other private developers, to help solve this problem for affordable housing. And it certainly is a challenge, but it's also everyone's making some gains on that as we go. So.
Awesome. Let's see. So I'll take this slide. This, I think just this applies, I think certainly to the city of Boulder, but definitely in all of the municipalities in Boulder County, really anywhere you go. But, the entitlement process for good or bad, I think certainly can do its part in making housing unaffordable. You see my best maze graphic here. And I think, just to communicate what the challenge can be here is just it can be a really unpredictable process in terms of, you want to build X, can that actually get approved through a city process? Get a little feedback here. So, I think that piece is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I think we want, robust reviews. We want opportunities for local input. I think that's really important, but it definitely adds some uncertainty to the process and some risks to the process, which, I think is a little different for a public developer. For a private developer, that certainly results in, them needing to increase the cost of the housing that they're building just because the risk is increased. So that's definitely something we see locally as well as, honestly, nationally. It's a huge hurdle for affordable housing. Design guidelines, another, I think, double-edged sword. I think, we all love beautiful buildings. In Boulder County, we see height limits in effect in every community, and those are good things, I think, for a lot of reasons. They also have consequences in terms of housing affordability. So, you'll a lot of times see things like, planning departments want you to use brick on your facades, which is great and leads to really, beautiful buildings. But it's also much more expensive to build a building with a brick facade than a cheaper building material. So those, I think, are a lot of the trade-offs we see locally with just building design and kind of the architectural box that we have to be in order to get a project approved. That also manifests certainly in the city of Boulder, and really, this is an area that I think a lot of other municipalities are starting to look at closely. But when you look at the energy codes, and again, I tend to land that this is a pro, that we have very energy efficient buildings, but the cost for that is significant. And I think, we see it specifically locally in the city of Boulder, where the energy code is super stringent. We have incredibly efficient buildings, which is fantastic. What we do see is that oftentimes that puts us at a disadvantage in when we're competing for resources at the state level. We have to constantly be able to explain why our costs to develop are higher than, say, Westminster or Thornton or other communities in the Front Range that maybe don't have as stringent of energy codes. Again, I think that, I probably land that I would prefer a stricter energy code and more efficient buildings, but it's certainly, again, one of these areas that has trade-offs in terms of the cost of building, which ultimately results in, the cost of rent for someone to pay. So. And then finally, to, I think kind of wrap up on a more positive note, I think, specifically locally, we have really incredible partnerships, I think, at the city level and then also regionally. So Ryan alluded to it, but, for instance, in the city of Boulder, there's tremendous local funding for affordable housing that comes through the Inclusionary Housing Program. I think you see in the smaller municipalities that maybe don't have the same ability to do, direct funding for affordable housing. You see a lot of willingness on waiving impact fees, on waiving tap fees. You've seen in the city of Longmont expedited review processes and things of that nature, that all of those do have real impacts in making housing more affordable and making the process more predictable. And so I do think, even just the regional cooperation that you see in Boulder County between all the local governments goes a long ways in helping, ensure that each community is really, doing its part, doing what they can, because, the city of Lafayette's ability to support housing is different from the city of Boulder's, is different from Longmont's. But I think you see each of those communities really coming to the table to do what they can to help on housing affordability. And then we'll open it up, I think, for questions, or Anne Marie, you can kind of let us know how you want that to look. But Ryan pulled together these slides, which I think are from a previous presentation, from a Urban Land Institute presentation, but we want to just share them. I think they had, some really good just outlines of what we see impacting housing affordability in Colorado in general. So, this one is talking specifically about zoning codes and land use regulations. And, we are a state that has a significant amount of local control. I think for good or bad, when you compare it to other states where, the state itself has a higher ability to, tell local governments that they must approve certain projects or they must provide certain housing in certain places, which we don't see in Colorado. And then I thought, this slide, which just has some statistics around the regulatory cost, you see that kind of first section, the last bullet point, regulatory costs accounted for 32% of multifamily development, which is a big number. And I think, obviously, I'm not an anti-regulator, but I do think there are ways to streamline that would really help the housing affordability crisis we see in Boulder County. So, Ryan, anything I missed before we hand it back?
No, I know we're on a timeline here that I think that covers it in a very short time. But Anne Marie, how do you want to handle this? Do you want us to answer a couple of questions and then move on, or?
Yeah, let's see if, can you put your questions in the chat and we'll see what they are? Anybody? Oh, wait, I think we turned off the chat because it was getting a little distracting. So does anybody want to raise a hand and see if they have any questions? I'm going to look at gallery view. Do we have any hands up? David Adamson has a question. Megan, can you unmute David?
I think everyone should be able to unmute themselves.
Okay. David is unmuted.
I wonder if we can discuss, today and in future messages, just given what they just beautifully said at the end, that there is so much local control. We could make it easy to develop affordable housing by making that the default. What we need to create is this mix of housing affordable to the people who need it. Instead of, in Boulder, the only thing we're developing is luxury housing. Nothing against luxury housing, but just like we control so many things, like the number of housing units we build, we could say, if we wanted to, on the land, we need to see this mix. And it could be done without subsidy. You have the right mix of low, high subsidizes that, and middle can pay for itself. So I'm just hoping that someone can talk about that we could legislate a solution rather than these heroic efforts we're trying to do now.
Well, and some of us are involved in that, but this was supposed to be for questions of these two presenters. So
well, that was what they said at the end, that we had a lot of local control.
So do we have anybody who actually has questions of the presenters? Polly. There we go. Can you unmute yourself, or you're not able to?
Yes, I can now, right? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm wondering if both of these guys could comment upon the state preemption on rent control and the Telluride decision and the chilling effect that has had upon any municipality that tries to set up an affordable housing ordinance. It has absolutely crushed everyone, and we've had to, for years, work around that, and it prevents us from including building of rental units in any affordability.
Well, and these guys as developers may not be the best people to answer that. Megan may be a better person to answer that. She's actively working on that at the legislature. Do you want to, Megan?
I will happily defer to Megan there. I'm certainly not the policy wonk on this topic.
Okay.
And I apologize, I'm doing multiple things here, making rooms and following the chat and things. So your question was around like the rent control and the Telluride prohibition on forcing developers to create affordable rent when they build out for rentals. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And so there are some long-term efforts trying to undo some of that. This year at the legislature, there will be an inclusionary zoning bill being introduced to hopefully undo the Telluride decision so that there is more local control at the local municipality level. Rent control itself is more of a long-term effort, but there is several groups, including Together Colorado, who are working to take that on. Some of it is building the will at the local level, as well as not just not just passing a bill, but building the will among grassroots folks in cities and counties. But it'll actually happen once you pass it. And
Will, if you are on the ECHO mailing list or working with Together Colorado in any way, we will keep you apprised of those efforts. That will be part of what we're doing. So anyone else? I have a question of these two presenters before we move on, because we do have a very full agenda tonight. All right, well, I want to thank them for enlightening us about some of the things. And I get that a lot of what they are talking about is pretty technical, but it is the reality of, I see Councilman Brockett has his hand up, and I want to give you just a brief time to respond, since some of what was said had to do with the city of Boulder. Or do you have a question of the presenters, Councilman?
There we go. So I just wanted to add, Polly, that about a little bit more color on that inclusionary housing bill, that the bill that's being brought to the legislature, I'll put the text in chat from the previous version, would specifically allow municipalities to enable rent control for affordable housing within their communities. So and only in affordable housing. So I'll send you the text. But we
it's not rent control, though, Councilman. It's not rent control. It's just allowing folks to actually build at, say, a certain percentage has to be affordable housing.
But that's a form that has previously been called a form of rent control. So this would allow you to require rental housing at specified income targets in affordable housing developments in your community. So I'll send the text out, but they are asking for advocacy on this bill this year at the legislature, because it does have a little bit of an uphill climb. So this is a great thing for people to support when it comes forward.
All right, one more question, then we really have to move on. Lori?
Yeah, I was just wondering, in your last slide, you talk about the costs that are incurred. And I was wondering if there were certain things that could be done specifically in Boulder that you would recommend to minimize some of those costs.
Oh, that's a tough question. I mean, there are certainly things in Boulder that increase the cost of development. I think, one of the biggest things we see is just it's a very stringent process to go through. I think especially on the building design. I come from a design background, so I really like our buildings to look beautiful, and we want to leave a great legacy. But I think there are always it's just a series of trade-offs with all of these things in terms of time to go through entitlements. What does the building look like? What are the energy efficiencies and all of those things? So it's, I don't have a great answer, but those are certainly the places that we see the impacts the greatest.
And one of the things we're going to do in our breakout sessions this evening is allow you some time to brainstorm that and what you think could be done differently. in the planning and development process. So you'll get an opportunity to, you've heard a definition of the problem, and then you'll get some time to talk about solutions. So we have to move on.
Anne Marie, you were muted again. I'm not sure how.
I don't know what's going on. Sorry about that. Our next speaker is Nori Boyd, who is the director of the Boulder County Housing Authority, the interim director and the division director for the Division of Housing. And she is going to talk to us about a couple of things. First, she's going to talk to us about a needs assessment process that the county undertook to try and define what we need in the way of housing and the different communities and what they found about their needs. And then she's going to talk to you about the plan that the communities in the county got together and came up with to try to meet those needs. And then sort of talk about how well are we doing at that and where do we have to go? So that's what she's going to do with us. If you would put your hands down now, those of you I didn't get to that had your hand raised, so that if you raise your hand the next time, I know it's a new hand raise, that would be really helpful. And I'm going to let Nori get started.
Great, thanks.
Just a quick, Nori, just a quick note. I'm not sure if we're seeing the right screen. It looks like we're seeing kind of your notes on the screen instead of slide presentation.
Oh, let's see. I actually was just going to introduce Mackenzie Selke, who's also our fabulous graphic designer, and she was running the slideshow, and she has also been a part of the, yes, here we go, the Boulder County Regional Housing Partnership. So it'll be myself plus Mackenzie doing this presentation. And I'm Nori Boyd, the interim director for the Boulder County Housing Authority. Thanks, Anne Marie, and to Together Colorado, as well as ECHO. As you already heard from Ian and Ryan, that was a beautiful presentation, and what is being built is in Boulder County and City of Boulder is absolutely top notch, and it's going to be a great long-term investment in affordable housing. So we can all feel good about that. What I was going to talk about was, yes, the Boulder County Regional Housing Partnership, which has develop the plan amongst all of the communities in the various Boulder County jurisdictions who signed off on this wonderful commitment to affordable housing. The regional partnership has undertaken this affordable living very seriously on both the rental side, the home ownership side, the financing, the policy, the zoning. It's a big lift, and Anne Marie's been a huge part of that as well. And this has also intersected with perfect timing, our fabulous 2020 through 2024 consolidated plan. That's a federal HUD requirement for the entire region that outlines all of the planning work that has gone into creating housing in the past and lays out a plan for how we should address housing as a community in the future. And so that consolidated plan is a big public communications and engagement lift that goes into a data pool that's in a very HUD language. It's not user-friendly, but it was great because it gave us some data points to help inform the regional plan work. And so this is where these two plans kind of intersect. But we know that we want to change lives, and that affordable housing truly does change the trajectory of folks' lives. This is just a quick bit on what it can actually do to household incomes, whether you're a renter or in home ownership. These are some of the metrics that you'll see improve with just housing. Thanks, Mackenzie. Some of the definitions for affordable housing, many people I see who are in this call already know this, but for folks who are newer to it, when a household's paying no more than 30% of their income on housing costs, whether it's a home ownership mortgage or rent and utilities, without sacrificing those necessities, that's what we call affordable housing. In Boulder County, it's roughly, you'll hear this term, area median income. And what that means is in Boulder, roughly about $100,000 for a 3-person household is 100% of the area median income. So if somebody's at 30% of the area median income, then they're earning about $31,000 for a 3-person household. For a single person at that lower income level, you're earning about $24,000. And so that's just what we talk about when we when something is affordable, we often reference area median income. It's just that earning power that you have, and that is for civic workers, nurses, school teachers. It's just normal people in our community. Nobody special needs affordable housing. And on the home ownership side, you definitely see that demand for family housing. Next slide, Mackenzie, please. This is the Boulder County Regional Affordable Housing Plan, showing you every single jurisdiction within Boulder County that has signed on to this commitment to 12% affordable for all of our homes by 2035. So just establishing that regional goal has been a big lift. And just this past year, Erie signed on. So we now have everybody signed on to this commitment. And I think what's nice about this, Mackenzie, next slide, please, is that we are making progress towards creating housing. And there are a variety of different ways that we can do it. We can do it through rental housing construction. We can acquire and rehab existing housing. We can buy land. You can improve your zoning and add things like inclusionary housing and expedited zoning for affordable housing. There are so many ways to meet the regional plan, and that's been very positive. Next slide, Mackenzie, please. So these are just some of the items that we've highlighted that shows what you can do with collaboration, and that some of the joint educational outcomes. I think the biggest thing that we've done lately is the crisis response to COVID, of getting rent assistance out, eviction prevention. That's been a huge focus, and home ownership assistance, so that folks aren't having to give up their homes. And so this has all been the regional collaboration has allowed us to really get these rent assistance funds out that are coming from the federal government, the state, and that we've also been able to create at that local regional level. So that's been very powerful to have this regional partnership. Next slide, please. And these are just some of the other items that we've had some good progress on. In particular, we were just talking about, there's been great progress at the legislature with state housing bills, even though there's some fits and starts, but that's supported mobile home communities, renters, as well as some home ownership. So that's been very positive. Next slide, please. Some of the things that we've seen each community take on, again, it's not a one-size-fits-all plan, and there's not a one-size-fits-all demand or need. And so each community has really targeted specific ways that they can make affordability better within their community and what works best for their community. So we'll hear a lot about that as we go through some of the other presentations tonight about specific things that each community has done. Next slide, please. Some of the specific community priorities, these are just some examples that we pulled from that consolidated plan needs assessment. So each jurisdiction, based on lots of input from both affordable housing community and the business community, homeowners and renters, this is some of the feedback that each city or jurisdiction wanted to prioritize in the coming years. And so you'll see Longmont is focusing on development and rehabilitation of existing affordable rental. They're also doing some small business work and rental assistance payments related to COVID-19. City of Boulder is, as we just saw earlier with Ian's presentation, creating affordable rental housing, also supporting owner-occupied housing rehabilitation and creation of home ownership through inclusionary housing that's quite accessible. And they've got a long standing relationship of creating affordable housing home ownership programs that other communities can look to. Boulder County's prioritized some of the mobile home regulations and targeting middle homeowners and low-income renters, as well as that housing vouchers and housing affordability and rent assistance. And what came out of this needs assessment was pretty interesting, that really the county and all the communities within it over the past few years, we're seeing both owners and renters are just higher income than in the past. So we're basically seeing a force out of our low and moderate income households within Boulder County in different jurisdictions. We'd lost about a half of the rental units that are affordable to folks who are earning between $25,000 and $35,000 in Boulder. It was interesting that about 90% of renters can't afford that median home price of $750,000 in Boulder, which is not that surprising, but when you think about the majority of renters can't afford homeownership in our community, that's a problem. I also noticed that homeownership, the biggest need is homeownership at $375,000 and below. And we all know that you can't find that in Boulder County. And there was also a need for almost 8,000 rental units renting at $875 a month. So that's a lot. And so it's going to take a lot of different efforts to drive towards that homeownership component as well as the rental. There was also a big demand for vouchers. And not only that, but a push for landlords to actually accept people who hold a voucher. So if a senior is on a fixed income, they're having a really hard time finding a landlord that just will take their voucher. And a voucher is a really good deal right now. So I think that was interesting. Some of the things that we also saw that were surprising out of the needs assessment was that really African Americans had the lowest homeownership rates across the entire region. And next to that was kind of the Latinx community, and then Asian community, and then white, Caucasian. So that's not okay. The highest needs were also in that 50% area median income. So you're earning $50,000 for a 3-person household up to about $100,000 as a homeowner. So I think that that's a big kind of missing middle gap that we see in the community. And then we also saw the greatest need was for really low income rentals across the board to prevent homelessness. So some of those were just some of the highlights of the needs assessment that I think we know anecdotally, but to see it in data was kind of eye-opening for me. So I think I don't want to continue on, but I could go on with this forever. And I think we have so many opportunities and a lot of good momentum now. Next slide, Mackenzie, please. And we can just wanted to highlight our COVID-19 resources because we are still having a lot of input on our housing helpline, desire for rent assistance, anything that we can do. We're trying to get the word out so that folks can have access to supports that they need right now. Thank you.
Can I ask you, Nori, based on the goals of the regional plan of a 12% affordable housing by 2035, at the pace that we're going, are we set to achieve that?
I do think it's achievable. We are in the process right now, the partnership of just tallying up what we were able to obtain towards that goal in 2020. As horrifying as 2020 was, we did a lot, and that was surprising. I think that what we want to do is we also need to acknowledge that we're losing affordable housing that is not deed restricted. And so as much progress as we're making, we also need to account for what's being lost that is losing our community. Either rents are going up or households are getting out of that affordability range. So I think we've done a good job of making progress towards it. At the same time, I'm not convinced that we're not still losing affordable housing on both the ownership and the rental side.
And I noted on your slide that you actually have more housing that you want to buy and purchase that already exists than housing you want to build. And could you talk about any programs that are dealing with existing housing and getting it affordable, and what you're doing, what communities are doing about that?
Sure. Well, to be clear, that is an anecdotal. We want to buy and obtain existing housing and we want to build new, and we want to rezone properties that could be repurposed from, say, industrial, or there's not as much demand for commercial property right now. Let's repurpose it into mixed use that includes commercial and residential. So those numbers in the slide are a possibility of what we could do, but we'll take acquiring existing properties. As I said, we're losing those to the market. They're not deed restricted, and simply purchasing them and placing a deed restriction on them and saying that this is going to be affordable to 100% area median income and below, for example, is a great way to maintain what we've already got. And so it doesn't require a whole new construction, new build in order to do something like that. And I'd say almost every jurisdiction is doing that right now, Longmont and City of Boulder in particular.
Hey, Nori, this is Jeff. I'm sorry I had to join the meeting a little late, but members and unions come first. I'm curious on the scale of those projects you might be talking about. I think perhaps in our next meeting, we might cover why I'm asking that question. But in the terms of tens of millions of dollars to buy and repurpose, what are we talking about there?
I think there's a couple of answers for that. Recently, we put like $3 million into some existing duplexes, triplexes, and we're able to renovate those, put them into an affordability program. And they're definitely not glamorous, but they're also not tens of millions of dollars, but it's definitely millions. I think on the simply enticing landlords and putting landlords into a program that will accept vouchers and voucher holders, that's a pretty easy win and more of a marketing, not a very low risk and low barrier to entry way of preserving affordable housing by simply enticing existing landlords in our community to take voucher holders. New construction and just purchasing land is certainly very expensive in our very expensive community. But it's also doable, and it's a fixed asset that's very valuable for the community for many years. So I still believe in all of the above. Buying in existing properties, using our voucher assistance and keeping our seniors and disabled folks in our community, as well as building new housing.
All right, I see a lot of questions in the chat, but I think the breakout sessions are going to be an opportunity for you to discuss some of those questions, because some of the questions are solutions. And so we have, Megan, can you share that document that I sent you so that the chat has the instructions for what to do in the breakout session? Or I can pull it up. Hold on.
Oh, I've got it. Just, you want me to share?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, it's easier for you to do it. I'm not so good with
Okay, and
that.
then I'm also gonna put the questions in the chat for everyone, just so when you go in your breakout room, you'll have them. Share. Okay, are you seeing the questions, Anne-Marie?
Yep. So you see in the chat or in the screen share, there is the 2 questions we want you to ask tonight. And then you'll have about 20 minutes for a conversation. And the instructions are appoint a scribe who will take notes. And then someone will be asked to report out loud the group's discussion. Sometimes that's easier if it's the person who took the notes, but it doesn't have to be. And then we'd ask everyone in the group to try to pay attention to the principles of trying to hear from as many people as possible. And we know that some of you have a passion for a specific solution or a specific issue that your government ticked you off about, and you want to talk about that. And this is not the time for that. This is a time to try to allow everyone in the group to speak, and also to brainstorm outside the box and to think of things that you might not have thought of before. So if the same thing keeps coming up over and over again, why don't you ask people to raise their hand and say, if everyone agrees that that's the case, then you put that one down and then move on to another topic so that you can try and get ideas generated and be creative. So that's what we'd like you to do. Then when you report back, we will have 12 minutes for all the groups. So it's going to be a pretty quick reporting back. And we're going to do like we did last time, where there'll be a link, a Google Doc in the chat. Megan, is that there? That you can put your notes on. And when you put your notes on that Google Doc, it'll come to us and then we'll have it shared, and you don't have to do anything more with it. But if you mess up and you don't get it shared in the Google Docs, you can see Megan's email address here on the bottom of this shared slide that we put up, and Megan at togetherco.org. So if you miss the Google Doc somehow, if it doesn't work, you can send it to Megan via email. So now we are going to break up into two categories: City of Boulder people and East County people. And I'm going to let Megan take it from here and explain how we're going to do it.
Great. So if you haven't done this before, we're having you choose your breakout room. So rather than me assigning you. And so just as Anne-Marie said, we're going to have basically two different categories, but several breakout rooms. Partly because I don't know how many folks are here from the city of Boulder and how many folks are here from, outside of the city. So when I open up the breakout rooms, you're going to see on your screen the list of breakout rooms. And so again, if you're from the city of Boulder, choose one of the 8 rooms that is the city of Boulder. If you're not from the city, choose one of the 8 rooms that is East Boulder County. And then what you can do once you look at the rooms, you can see how many people are in each room. So we made enough room so that, there could be 5 to 8 folks instead of 30 in one room. So just be aware of that. So again, you'll be able to see which rooms you should go to, how many people are already in there. And then if you have any questions, just hang around. I can help you out. I have 3 rooms called TBA. Those are just extra if for some reason we need to use them. But for now, just look at the 8 for the city of Boulder and the 8 for East County. So I'm going to open it now, and it should pop up on your screen. So sure, basically we decided to give you guys a few extra minutes in the breakout rooms. This is the first time we've tried this. So thank you for just being gracious with us as we went about it. And so we don't have 12 minutes to report out, but it's probably, we want to make sure we've got a couple more speakers here tonight. So if we can maybe do 5 to 7 minutes and have folks from each group, if you have your spokesperson chosen, to share some of the highlights, and then we'll make sure to get you all the notes afterward. Does that feel good, Anne-Marie?
Yes, sounds good. Start with Boulder Group 1. You want to do that? Who's Boulder Group 1? And somebody's talking and you're muted, so you're going to have to unmute everybody, Megan.
Okay, well, if you could help me find them. I'm just looking at all my screens if your hand is raised. So.
Okay, Kathleen. Kathleen, you're muted and we can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
Yep, I'm unmuted. Okay. Back to my notes. Sorry. We had about 8 or 9 people in our group. Everyone had a chance to speak. We only addressed the first question, but I think we addressed it well. People were identifying some of the issues that create affordable housing issues in the city. Rent control, we have lack of political will. People say they want affordable housing, but then neighbors object to affordable housing projects. We don't have the advocates for specific projects speaking up, whereas the folks against specific projects do show up and they help defeat projects. We limit the number of building permits each year, which restricts people who can live here. We have a very large minimum lot size, essentially 7,000 square feet in the city. How do we build duplexes and triplexes? Lot sizes that big. or can we allow duplexes and triplexes on those single family zoned places? Our height limits are, while nobly intentioned, don't allow us to build greater density, things like setbacks, also limit density. Entitlement hearings and redesigning at every stage of projects adds greatly to the time and cost of projects and makes some projects unfeasible in the end.
I have to cut off there because we're going to give about 1 minute to each group. The rest of it, we'll have to get you in the group.
Those are some of the ideas. Thanks.
Boulder Group 2.
Anne Marie, I'm not sure, this is Jeff, and I'm not sure which group I was in, but Lauren is reporting for that.
Okay. Where's Lauren? Raise your hand, Lauren. I can't see.
Can you?
There we are. We got you.
Okay. So our group discussed some of our perceived barriers, and like several of us are involved differently in this issue as well. So some of the barriers include market forces that encourage people to buy property and renovate them so that they no longer become affordable. There's the issue of financing the land on which affordable houses are built, an issue of the loss of affordable housing, issue of transparent data, and understanding why affordable housing is shrinking, the issue that rent is not controlled, the issue of basically the open space constraining the physical land. And of course, there's also barriers of like people in the community not being on the same page about the issue. And some of the things we discussed for overcoming the barriers include, like, for instance, financing the land. You could look at community land trusts, or, you know, really some grassroots organizing on the political side of things, like, for instance, supporting bedrooms are for people. And
then I got to stop you.
Perfect. Okay.
All right. Boulder Group 3. Do we have a Boulder Group 3?
Yeah, I can address our group. This is Rebecca speaking. We weren't able to get to the second question. Some of our thoughts on the first question, of course, just the cost of everything being the big barrier here, and then there was some discussion around, you know, just the role of developers and you know, differing perspectives on like what the role of developers are and what it should be, and yeah, so that kind of barrier. We talked a lot about like just different sources of pressure. So, you know, balance of office and retail versus housing, and how it feels very out of balance with just not enough housing relative to jobs and retail. And then also balancing housing demand that that the university has as well, to house students and staff and faculty. And then the sort of final barrier we were discussing is just the scale of the problem relative to our solutions, and the sentiment that a lot of our solutions aren't getting at the real scale of the problem, that we need thousands of units, like really thousands, and we're going to address have to address a lot of these barriers to get to that point of providing thousands of units of housing, if we're really gonna tackle the problem, and that a lot of that coming down to zoning and building requirements that are prohibitive. So
okay, thank you. I'm going to pick one from East Boulder County. I think I was in East Boulder County #1, and Jean, are you there? I can't see you. Do you have your hand? Can you put your hand up?
I'm on now.
There you go. Okay. Jean, want to report for the East Boulder County one, and this is the last one we're going to be able to do, so we can get to our final 2 speakers, and the rest of you, I'm sorry to say, are going to have to give us your thoughts in writing. I apologize. There's always not enough time.
So the greatest barriers we talked about were interest groups, cost of land, NIMBYism, anti-development sentiment in certain areas, and plain old don't want the neighborhood to change. Solutions, to engage interest groups with facts and figures, education to change perceptions, and get the interest groups such as the chambers to understand that if the folks have affordable housing, there will be the ability to work and property values will not decrease at all. Amen.
All right. Good job, y'all. Thank you. I think this is going to be very exciting to see what else you came up with. I'm going to switch the order a little bit. I'm going to let the mayor of Lafayette is here, Mayor Jamie Harkins, along with Marcus Packner. And I don't see you, Marcus. Are you here? Can you wave at me, Marcus? There you go. Okay. So we thought we would end with 2 success stories, even though we, looked at a lot of sort of how hard it is to build affordable housing. We thought we would share with you 2 success stories here at the end, and profile 2 important projects that are really an example of what we can do. And so the first is going to be Jamie and Marcus talking to us about a Lafayette project called Willoughby Corner, and they're going to take 5 minutes, and I know this might put us 5 minutes over, y'all. I hope you can stay an extra 5 minutes. And then we're going to do a quick presentation about a senior housing project in Longmont that Heidi Peterson's going to do. So go ahead, Mayor Harkins.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so thanks for having me. I'm just here to super quickly talk with Marcus about a project we're working on out here in East County in Lafayette. So Lafayette's been working on affordable housing for a while, just like all the other cities around us. So much more to do, but to help accomplish what we wanted to do, the city did adopt an affordable housing development fee, and that went into effect back in 2016. And we've updated it a few times. It's now $1 a square foot on all new residential and commercial development. And that is to really fund permanently affordable housing. And so what is exciting is that this money has allowed us to partner with Boulder County, and we actually purchased some land. Sorry, my puppy isn't feeling well tonight, so she's trotting around behind me here. We purchased some land. It's a 24-acre parcel located out at the intersection of 120th and East Emma Street here in Lafayette. And we actually bought it from Flatirons Community Church, who was going to one day put a campus out there. So we were able to partner with the county and buy that land and enter into an intergovernmental agreement to dedicate that land only to permanently affordable, deed restricted, below market rate homes. So we are just really excited about this project. It's close to our downtown, close to transit, and Marcus is going to tell you a little bit more about the site itself. So go ahead, Marcus.
Thank you very much, Mayor Harkins. Nice to see you. Anne Marie, thanks very much for having us. I do have a few slides. I will be very quick in working through these. This is that wonderful site that we call Willoughby Corner. You can go to the next slide, please, Jasper. I'm a consultant for Boulder County, and what we're really implementing here is this next slide that talks about the Lafayette process. And one thing I want to show here is this is when we started the project to talk about the success story that's in the works. We really believed in immersion and that community-wide engagement. We created kind of a concentric outreach where we worked with the closest and most affected neighbors and really wanted to show a terrific designed community, a neighborhood actually that benefits all. So this is a little bit about our community-wide engagement. This group here, the ELAC, these have been our advisory committee. Some of them are on this call tonight. They are integral to this process. We wanted neighbors to feel like this was an extension of the neighborhood. And so what we did is we really went to all the different groups and had them help us shape this project. These are examples of the member organizations. Next slide, please. This is some examples that you all have gone through. We did stakeholder outreach. We did big design workshops. We did dococracy, where you kind of go through and kind of go what you really want to see in the project and see it come to fruition. Next slide, please. This is just a sample of kind of how we did that concentric outreach. We have done hundreds of meetings on this topic and discussions where we've really gathered that community input for this project. Next slide. The end result of that is something that we really believe is a neighborhood. As you see on Emma Street, a great street that runs into Old Town, you see these duplexes that we are doing there. These will actually be for sale affordable housing that we're working with Boulder County, where it really has that Old Town feel. It transitions south, actually just to the west of this site is the Peak to Peak School. Then we have these townhomes that really blends into the site that allows senior housing and different things here. And then in purple, you see some of our multifamily product, which is also a mixture of senior housing as well. Next slide. One thing I just wanted to show is really the design, the elements that the mayor talked about. We've tried so much to make this feel like it's part of the neighborhood. There's such a rural texture to the east of us across the Flag Drive and 120th Street. So we put our buffer, our transition there, but then allowed it to feel much more like a city street as it came into Emma. Also a very important community asset right in the middle. It's about a 10,000 square foot community center that will have community organizations there in the heart of the site as well. Next slide. This shows a little bit about the open space, some of those things that we think are so important from a Boulder County perspective, certainly from a Lafayette perspective. But you see the buffering, the inclusion of gardens and parks, and really this kind of the muse pulling this in to feel like a true neighborhood. Next slide. This shows a little bit of the connectivity. The yellow are just sidewalks, but the red is this 10-foot multi-use trail that eventually on the east side will go all the way north-south on 120th Street. It pulls it through our site. It connects over to the school. So we're really providing this very robust and active community for our residents as well. Next slide. This just shows you a little bit, just in context, as we look kind of at the Flatirons. And by the way, I just have to say, I grew up and went to school in Boulder. I'm a Colorado native. I am most proud. I've worked on 600 units in the last 3 years of affordable housing. And now we're going to add these 400. And I cannot tell you, I am most proud of this because of the diligence that went into the design elements of this project. You see it looking to the west against the school. You see how it blends along Emma Street, that kind of duplex feel. And then the multifamily is actually at the south of this, is actually against kind of a more industrial area. So it makes a very natural transition to kind of that buffer there. Next slide. I think these are just a few more images, kind of that south, that multifamily, the senior housing that we're talking about here. You see the 3-story product. Again, the next one, that's fine, Jasper, go to the next one again to show kind of that cottage feel, the duplexes along Emma Street, really trying to emulate. We don't have the architecture done yet, but we're going to emulate kind of the old town style of Lafayette as well. Next slide. Again, just an internal slide kind of showing how we're planning the units and the way they will lay out. And then finally, just capturing some more of kind of the layouts of this community. Next slide. I think the one thing I just want to show here is that housing here. We are going to be delivering hopefully 400 total units, 240 are in a multifamily form. There's 114 townhomes and 46 duplexes, all different ranges. We have an agreement, as the mayor mentioned, with the city on how that's structured, how it is. But we're certainly most excited about up to 80 units would be for sale affordable housing, which we think is pretty remarkable for this site. Next slide. I think this is probably just our parting one. We continue to work with the city on the roundabouts, the connections, working with Peak to Peak School. We've had such a great partnership with them. They're integrally involved in this planning process as well. But I think just we wanted to show you how you can blend this site and a true success story into a neighborhood and garner the support of the surrounding neighborhoods to try to bring affordable housing to Lafayette. I think that's probably it. You saw this slide earlier. This is our inspiration for every one of us, is to bring Home Wanted to provide homes. And we're certainly very proud of what we're trying to build here in Lafayette at Willoughby Corner. So I tried to be very quick. Go right ahead.
Marcus, remind us of the total acreage, please.
One more time. I apologize.
The total acreage is how much?
Yes, it's at, the mayor said it's 24 acres on the site is what we have there across it. And then we're looking at about 35% open space across the site as well.
And prior use, Marcus?
It's a undeveloped land today. The Flatiron Church did own it and they were going through the process. We think this is probably a much better solution for the community.
Well done, sir.
Thank you very much.
I have to cut off the questions now because we have one more presentation. And I would like to have Heidi, where are you? Heidi Peterson from Longmont is going to talk about a senior housing project. Where are you, Heidi? Can you wave at me? There you are. Okay, good. All
Can I
right.
share? I need to share my screen.
Just let Megan will make you a co-host so you can do that. And this will be just 5 minutes, y'all, and then we'll let you go. So I'm sorry we're late. But this just says something about the importance of this issue and how much we all care about it. So can you get her on?
Heidi, well, she's been a co-host, so you should be able to see at the bottom of your screen, share screen.
Yeah, hold on. There we go, share screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Yes? Okay, so I'm talking about affordable housing in Longmont. And just real quick, I wanted to talk about bias associated with affordable and low income housing. And Nori went over the definition earlier. So it's 30% of a total household income. And there's a lot of not in my backyard, I don't want Cabrini Green. And a good comeback with that is that Cabrini Green was demolished over 20 years ago. And it's kind of an old model for affordable housing. I just have a cute, quick picture of what that looked like. Those high rises had over 1,000 households in them. So moving forward in Longmont, we are with the Boulder County Partnership, and our goal is 12% affordable. And affordable housing in Longmont allows people to live in the community where they have networks, jobs, and support systems. And while low income and affordable housing does serve people with no income, it also serves workforces. And very often people at the beginning of the year, their careers or in retirement can not afford housing in their community. So here's Fall River Senior Housing, opened in 2020. It's 60 units. AMIs are 30 to 50%. And I thought I'd really throw home what that looked like. So a single person at 40% AMI is earning $36,000, which is equivalent to a full-time job making almost $18 an hour. And so these affordable units let seniors live in the place where they lived without having to deal with, if they downsize, they can be near their kids without a huge income to support it. So, so there you go.
Well, I hope that what you see in these two examples are some affordable housing and how attractive it can be and how much of a need it can meet. I think those of us who live in communities with seniors know the struggle they have to stay in their homes. And the exciting thing about that project is it serves relatively low income people and it still looks very, very nice. And then the Willoughby Corner project is exciting because of its mix. You know, it's multifamily, townhouses, duplexes, and the 35% green space also is really attractive. And so I hope you take away from this that affordable housing can be lovely and can meet a community need. So that's our presentation for tonight. We're 7 minutes late and I apologize. And I see some people thanking us and shaking hands and applauding. And I'm so grateful that you were all here. Questions or comments? I'm just trying to think, Megan, have we given them email addresses for us so that if people have feedback,
Please do. We need your comments. We need your continued involvement.
So I'm going to put mine in the email in the chat. And next time I won't be doing the talking. Jeff is going to be doing the talking. So Jeff, you can't be late next time. And then Megan will do the last one. So then I can just hide my video and drink my coffee while the rest of y'all talk. So thanks everyone for being here. At one point we had about 120 participants. I don't know what we have right now, but it shows there's a lot of continued ongoing interest, and we'll keep talking. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.